You are listening to Artificial Evidence, where the algorithm knows. I am Owen Carver, and today we are heading deep into the Louisiana Bayou in the year 1986. It was a time when the heat clung to your skin, where the thick cypress trees cast long shadows over the water, and where a small town found itself at the mercy of a ruthless predator. A string of brutal murders would uncover dark secrets buried beneath the mud, and a killer who thought he was untouchable would learn that the bayou does not keep secrets forever. This is the story of the Bayou Butcher. The town of Belle Hollow, Louisiana, was not much more than a few dusty roads, a gas station, and a general store where people gathered to gossip about things that never seemed to change. Life was slow, the air thick with humidity, and the scent of the swamp hung over everything. But in the summer of 1986, Belle Hollow changed forever. It started on June 12th. A fisherman named Eddie Broussard was out before dawn, his boat drifting through the bayou, the mist still clinging to the water like a ghost. He was looking for catfish, but what he found instead made him turn his boat around so fast he nearly tipped it. Floating near the roots of a bald cypress tree was the body of a young woman. Her skin was pale, her throat sliced clean, and her wrists were bound with nylon rope. The look in her dead eyes was one of terror. Sheriff Hank Lawson had seen his fair share of tragedy in Belle Hollow, drunk driving accidents, the occasional bar fight gone too far, but this was different. This was calculated. This was evil. The victim was identified as Diane Thibodeau, a 24-year-old waitress from the Belle Hollow diner. She had left work 2 nights before and never made it home. The town was shaken, but at first, they wanted to believe it was a horrible, isolated act. Then came the second body. On June 18th, just 6 days later, a hunter found another woman in the woods, not far from where Diane had been discovered. Her name was Lorraine Foster. Same injuries, same bindings. Belle Hollow was no longer just afraid, they were terrified. Women started traveling in groups, the bars emptied out early. The men in town took turns keeping watch over their homes at night, shotguns resting on their laps. But whoever the killer was, he was not done. The third body surfaced on July 3rd. Rachel Moreau, just 19 years old, barely more than a girl, pulled from the swamp, her body half hidden in the reeds. The wounds were the same, the bindings identical. That was when people started calling him the Bayou Butcher. Sheriff Lawson knew he was out of his depth. He called in help from Baton Rouge, and the Louisiana State Police arrived, bringing with them profiler Thomas Grady, a man who had spent years studying killers. Grady looked at the pattern and made a chilling assessment. This was not random. The killer knew these women. He watched them, stalked them, learned their routines. He was not picking strangers. And then came the strangest detail. Each victim had a small cut on their right palm, a precise, clean incision, almost surgical. It did not match the brutality of the other wounds. It was deliberate, ritualistic. The town's fear turned to paranoia. Then came the first suspect. His name was Paul Delacroix, a loner who lived in a cabin deep in the swamp. He had a record, petty theft, a bar fight, a history of anger issues. More than that, he had known Diane. They had dated, briefly, and when they broke up, Diane had told friends he scared her. The police brought Paul in for questioning. He was a big man, rough around the edges, and he did not like being accused. He swore up and down he had nothing to do with it, but his alibi was weak. The town wanted it to be Paul. They needed it to be him. And then, just when it seemed like they had their man, the killings continued. On July 17th, another woman went missing. She was found 2 days later, her body dumped in the exact same spot as Rachel Moreau. Paul Delacroix was still in custody when it happened. They had the wrong man. The real killer was still out there. The town's fear turned into something else. Desperation. The police went back over everything, and then they found the connection. All 4 women had visited the Belle Hollow clinic in the weeks before their deaths, a small family-run doctor's office that had been in town for decades. One doctor, Dr. Charles Avery, a man who had delivered half the babies in Belle Hollow, a respected figure, a trusted one. But behind closed doors, Charles Avery was not the man everyone thought he was. Investigators searched his office. What they found was worse than they imagined. Medical files with missing pages, prescriptions written under false names, a hidden compartment in his desk filled with photographs of the victims. And then, in the supply closet, they found a box filled with nylon rope, the exact kind used to bind the women. Charles Avery was arrested on August 1, 1986. When they searched his home, they found even more damning evidence. A journal, written in his own hand, detailed notes about each victim, the way he had watched them, followed them, chosen them. But the most chilling part? The notes did not end. There were more names, more women who had not been killed yet, women who had no idea they had been marked for death. Charles Avery never confessed. He never gave an interview. He was found guilty in 1987 and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He died behind bars in 2005. Belle Hollow tried to move on, but the scars never really faded. The bayou still whispered at night. The cypress trees still swayed in the breeze, and somewhere beneath the surface, the ghosts of the past lingered. Because in places like Belle Hollow, the water never really forgets. That is the story of the Bayou Butcher, a reminder that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones we should fear. Thank you for listening to Artificial Evidence. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. The algorithm knows.